Zayin on the bottom of page 301. And the Rebbe is explaining, after describing at length the power of the Jewish soul and the divine source of the Jewish soul, which means that given freedom, left to its own devices, the Jewish soul would not be able to disconnect from Hashem. To do an Aveira is a completely illogical, irrational thing for the Jewish soul. It's not a possibility. So how is it that we do Aveiras? We said because there's a foolishness, that a temporary insanity that takes us over, where we don't recognize the reality that by going against Hashem's will, you're disconnecting from Him. If we would realize that, we never would do it. So the Rebbe explains at the bottom of 301, the reason for this spirit of foolishness is explained in the Mishnah. When it talks about the woman who strays from the path, yes, the wayward wife, which is talking about a woman who has been unfaithful. So that the Torah is really talking there not just about a wayward wife, but about the Jewish soul, which is Hashem's wife, straying from the path. Now, in the Mishnah, discussing the Isha Saita, the wayward woman, it says, "Kashem shemaseh ma'aseh behema, kach karbana meichel behema," that the way she behaved was in an animalistic way, like an animal. So therefore, the sacrifice she brings was animal fodder. Meaning that she brought a sacrifice made from barley. Barley in those times was primarily to feed the animals. And so she had to bring a barley sacrifice because that's animal food, because she acted like an animal. She behaved like an animal. What does that mean? Well, on a simple level, she behaved like an animal. An animal just does whatever it wants, follows its instincts, doesn't have any boundaries. And so she behaved in such a way. She followed her urges, her instincts. And so she brings an animalistic sacrifice. But on a deeper level, the reason why we sin, what allows us to sin is this foolishness. It's because we are an animal. Meaning we're behaving like an animal, we're reacting to our animalistic side to our personality. What's an animal? An animal here means we're living without awareness of holiness. Without an awareness of holiness. What defines an animal as opposed to a human being is a lack of self-awareness and a lack of awareness what's around them. There's no calculation, there's no thought, there's no sensitivity in an animal's actions. They do what they're instinctively built to do. And that's nothing wrong. For when they do that, that's nothing wrong. When an animal does that, that's what they're supposed to do. That's how they're built. They're not built with a sense of what's going on around them or a higher purpose. So that's normal, that's fine. Whereas when a human being acts that way, we're being lower than a human being. And therefore we're being lower than an animal. An animal's doing what it's supposed to do, we're not. A lack of a sensitivity to holiness. The over the page, the only reason why we have a desire for material things, physical things, which are emptiness and foolishness, is because of this animalistic insensitivity that we develop. Meaning we chase after things that are really not very special and not very meaningful, and we spend our life and put our energy and our powers into doing things that are unholy. They're not be evil, may not even be evil, but just unholy things. That's because we're not sensitized to the higher truth. It's this that allows us to make the mistake and to think that when we do an Aveira, we're not separated from Hashem. So again, because we are living like an animal, meaning not sensitive to the higher truth, just following our instincts, feeding our urges, doing what we feel like doing, so that desensitizes us to holiness. And once you're desensitized to holiness, so then anything goes. You could do the worst sin, but convince yourself that I'm still okay. Even though I'm doing this evil thing, I'm still alright. I'm still okay. You're not okay. When you do that, you disconnect from the divine source. You're disconnected from Hashem. That's not okay. That's a big problem. But when you're not sensitive to the whole thing in the first place, it doesn't bother you. So then you're just going along like an animal. So it doesn't have any impact on you. So then you can sin, even though it's against your nature to sin. Your soul wouldn't let you sin if you'd be aware of yourself and aware of the divine. Now it could be that you do have somewhat of an understanding, a bit of a sense of holiness, meaning you go to shiurim, you learn a bit, you think a bit, you daven. We're not talking about somebody who's an animal, really like an animal. Like, you do have a bit of a spiritual life, you have a bit of a sensitivity, you do some good stuff in your day, you learn and you have a bit of understanding. But it's not enough. It's not enough to have that. You have to have das. It's not enough to have some understanding and knowing about it. You have to have das. What's das? Das means connecting to the ideas that you learn, internalizing them, being emotionally moved by them. It becomes real. As explained in Tanya, that in our intellectual capacities, we have an ability to study a topic, let's say, read a book, listen to a class, and there's ideas that you've understood, they're in your mind. But your understanding is separate from you. It's a piece of information, it's a theory, it's an idea, it's a topic, it's a concept. So you've got the concept, but that's not me, that's the concept. I've understood it. I may be able to explain it really well. I could write a whole book on it myself. That doesn't mean that I've got it. It means I've understood it, I have it in my mind, but it doesn't mean that it's me. It hasn't become me yet. It hasn't been executed? Yeah. But even before executing means to do it, to actually live on it, but even before that, it has to become yours. The idea has to become reality. There's a difference between knowing something as an intellectual fact or knowing it as a reality, as it's real. Yeah. And so the Rebbe here is saying that an important step in our learning is to take things to the next stage. You've understood it, you've got the concept, it's a concept, it's a theory, it's an idea, good. Now you have to marinate in that idea. You have to dwell on it, you have to let it sink in. It has to become reality for you. Once it becomes reality, then it will affect your emotions, it'll affect your life, and it'll be real. And the scary thing is that you can spend many, many years knowing a lot of information and becoming an expert in something and well versed in it without it ever touching you, without ever being really affected by it, because it's remained information. It hasn't sunk into to be just reality. So that is the power of das. Das is the intellectual power of letting it sink in and it becoming real, connecting to the idea where it actually affects you. It's no longer a separate idea. It's not something out on the outside, like an idea that's out there. It's something that's mine. That's what das is. And that's what an animal lacks. So it's not enough to learn, it's not enough to know, it has to have das. It has to actually sink in. End of the third line. And that's why almost all souls in our generation, in this time of history, are called animals. There's an idea, it's brought in Torah, the Alter Rebbe says, that there's two types of neshamas. There's one called Zera Adam, which means the seed of Adam, of humans, and there's the seed of animals. Some souls are human, some souls are animals. We're not here talking about the animal soul and the divine soul. We're talking about here, even your divine soul. There are some divine souls that are on the level of an animal, whereas there are some divine souls that are on the level of a human being. And the human being souls are souls of Atzilus, souls that are from a higher world, tzaddikim, and everybody else is in comparison to that like an animal, meaning that we don't have nearly the same sensitivity to holiness. It's not as real to us. We have to struggle to have any connection with holiness. So the Alter Rebbe says that these days most souls are the animal soul, meaning the animal grade soul. That's what we are. That's what we are. So what does that mean? Even though all of our souls, just about everybody, is totally able to grasp and understand and have a sense of holiness. It's within all of our reach. And certainly the greatness of Hashem is something all of us can learn about and start to get a little bit. In other words, by saying that our souls are animal souls, I don't mean nefesh habahamis, I mean we're on the grade of animals. We're desensitized, we don't have das like an animal. Hang on a minute, let's be clear. We all have the ability to have a grasp somewhat of godliness, of studying what we're studying and have a bit of sensitivity and get it. We can. In Pisfarim and Pisofrim, we can learn it from books, we can learn it from teachers, Hasaga, V'havana Gedola, and you can actually reach quite high levels of understanding of godliness. It's within our grasp. We can do this. We can have a deep understanding of godliness. But nevertheless, we will still be called in the category of the animal type of soul. Because what we're lacking is the das, is the feeling of it. What's really difficult for us is for what we learn to become real to the point where we feel it. That's something that a tzaddik does naturally, and for the rest of us it's very difficult. So we can understand it, we can get it, we can grasp it, we can explain it, but to feel it is not so easy.
Because of the level of our soul.
Mm-hmm. Why is this hard? Because das is described in Tanya in the following way. The first time the word das appears in the Torah is that it says that Adam knew Eve. Yada, das. So what does it mean there? It says Adam knew Eve and she gave birth. So it meant having a connection, a physical connection. So in Tanya it says, so that means, what does the word das really mean? It means to connect and become one with something. To intimately bond. That's what das means. You don't just think about something with a passing, fleeting thought. Because then it's very easy to disconnect from the thought. When it's just a passing thought, when you just got it and in one ear out the other, you disconnect. But to connect to the idea means that you have to lie in it. You have to dwell in it, you have to marinate in it. Right? So we are so flooded with information that most things pop into our head and pop out of our head. And we're not emotionally moved by it. It doesn't become a reality to us. It doesn't sink into us, and we forget it. We forget half the things that we see and read. And, 5 minutes ago we've forgotten it already. That's because our mind is always working, and it might be understanding it, but it's not connecting to it. Not every idea is sinking in because we're not connecting to it. It's just passing through our mind. Das is when you actually connect to the idea. So that's one definition of das. Like Adam knew Eve, they connected. To connect to an idea, to really let it sink in. And on a higher level, das means to feel the thing. Not just to know it, but to actually feel it. To feel it means that it moves you, it touches you. Not just that you feel it in your mind, but you actually feel it in your heart. That's real das. So the Rebbe here is saying that in study, in learning, there's three stages. There's the stage of understanding, just getting what's being spoken about, getting it clear. Then there's connecting to the idea, meaning, okay, you've understood it now, so now let it sink in, make it yours, put it into your mind, make it something that it's not a subject you're studying about, but a reality that you're connecting with. And that will lead to feeling, that you actually feel the truth of it. It's like, it's not something that you need to be convinced of intellectually anymore. It's like a reality that a concrete reality. That's hargasha, that's real das. So that takes a certain amount of effort to achieve that.
If our souls are the animal grade soul, can we actually achieve that?
We can, and we'll see that we can. But it's harder for us. It's not as natural to us. A tzaddik learns this, and it's just reality. They're impacted. We have to struggle to say, yeah, is this really talking to me? Am I on this level? You know, like we have all these hesitations about it. Like maybe I'm not up to this. You know, maybe this is beyond me or something. So we've understood it, but like there's resistance to that holiness. That's because we're on the animal level of soul.
It can take a long time of meditating and thinking on a concept. I mean,
correct.
Months and years or days or whatever.
Correct. It can take a long time, a lot of effort, letting it sink in.
Is there a good explanation of how to get to dust? How to get to the...
Well, it's work and it's time.
It's work and time.
So, you know, what Chassidim would do is they would learn a Maamar, understand it clearly, go through it a few times, not just once, go through it a few times till it's clear in their mind, and then they would think about it. Often during davening. Davening was a time to, you know, you'd learn before davening, learn an idea, let it sink in, and then during davening, contemplate the idea, like in the davening, make it a part of your davening. And by contemplating it, thinking it over, that's how it starts to shine for you. The concept becomes not an idea, but like a light in your soul, like you actually feel it. But you have to go through each stage. First you have to understand it. If you didn't understand it in the first place, there's nothing to contemplate. You have to understand it clearly. And at that stage you're using intellect and you're observing the idea as a concept. There's a certain distance between you and the idea. But once you've understood it clearly, then you can play with it. You can dwell on it, rip it apart, and that's how it becomes real. So he'll go further into this. This idea of das is illustrated by a statement of the Rebbe Rashab. He says the reason why a child under bar mitzvah is not obligated in mitzvahs, until bar mitzvah you're not obligated in mitzvahs. Why is that? You can have a smart child who understands the concept of mitzvahs. He understands that there's Hashem in the world, and He's commanded us to do things, and that's our obligation, and he gets it. You know, a 10-year-old kid could get that. But until bar mitzvah, he is not called a bar das. He doesn't yet have das. Meaning, it's not possible for a child until bar mitzvah to feel the value and the importance and the depth of a mitzvah. They can understand it, they can be very smart, they can get it, they can explain it even. But there's a certain level of maturity you need to appreciate the depth of a mitzvah, to actually feel it, to internalize it. A child is not expected to have that and can't have that. And because a child does not have this feeling, this sense, this sensitivity, which is a maturity thing, you can't obligate someone who doesn't have that feeling and put on them the responsibility of doing the positive mitzvahs and avoiding the negative mitzvahs. So therefore, they're not yet obligated. Of course, we educate a child to do mitzvahs, but they're not obligated to do them yet. Like it says in the Gemara, when it's discussing the laws of making an oath or sanctifying something to the temple. Somebody could make an oath that they promise them, they make an oath that they are never going to do this, never going to eat meat, for the next month or forever again, or whatever it is. They make an oath. So in Jewish law, an oath is binding. Like it's a real thing. When you make an oath, you have to keep it. Or if you sanctify something, you say that I want to give my property to the temple. I sanctify my property, it belongs to the temple. By saying those words, something happens. That property now becomes sanctified and you can't use it anymore. It goes to the temple. So what if a kid makes an oath? Or what if a child sanctifies something? So the halacha says that to sanctify something or to make an oath, you have to know to whom you're promising, meaning to Hashem. And the word is yedul, you have to know. Know means not just be aware. A kid knows it's das. You have to have das. To be able to make a statement like that, we're not going to make you responsible for what you've said if you don't really know what you're talking about. Meaning you don't really feel it. The kid says, I know, I made a promise. I know what a promise is, and I know what God is, and I know that I'm responsible. And you know in your mind, but you don't know. You're not old enough to understand to the level where you feel it, where it's a reality. A child doesn't have that ability. Shadik b'zehu yoidim dafka, b'chinas hargasha. So das itself has several levels. The first level of das is that you've marinated yourself in the idea to the point where it's you connect with it, connecting to the idea. The second level is where you feel it, where you actually feel the idea. Meaning it's no longer just a concept, it's a feeling as well. Now the Rebbe says there's actually even higher level of das. There's a higher element of das as well. Even higher than the first two, than connecting to the idea and feeling the idea, is hakara. Hakara is the first word on the line, about 2/3 of the way down. Hakara. Hakara means what? Hakara means recognition. What does that mean? Let's see. You can sometimes have a feeling about something. You can have a feeling towards something, even if that thing is not fully revealed to you. Like sometimes the heart has a feeling, and you don't really know what it is. You don't really know what you're having the feeling about, but you've got a feeling. That you're worried about something. I've got a bad feeling about this. About what? I'm not sure exactly. I don't know what it is. I've just got a bad feeling.
Like intuition?
Yeah. So you feel it. You have some intuitive feeling about something, but you don't even know what you're feeling. You don't even know what it is. You just, I'm nervous about something here. This is something not quite good. What does that show? You can sometimes have a feeling about something that you're not fully aware of it. It's not a conscious awareness. It's just like this sense. So having a feeling about something doesn't mean the thing is so real to you yet. You might not even know what it is. The hakara, but a deeper level is when you recognize something. Hakara means, recognition means that your awareness of the thing is so real that it's like you're seeing it in front of your very eyes. You need no proof, you need no convincing. It's just a reality right in front of you. That's the deepest level of das here. So there's connecting to an idea, where an idea, you actually connect to it, you start to deepen your appreciation of the idea that it's not just a fleeting thought, but it's something that you dwell on and you connect with. Then there's a feeling, that comes from knowing, where you have hargash, you actually have a feeling. But then even deeper than that, where it just becomes such a reality, it's like it's right in front of you. The idea is like right there in front of you. And here we're talking about particularly a knowledge of Hashem. That knowing Hashem, you can know Hashem as a piece of information. Yeah, I know it. You know Hashem? Of course I know. Who's Hashem? Well, creator of heaven and earth, Yud Kei Vav Kei. You can list all types of descriptions. You know Hashem? Of course I know Hashem. Okay, but do you really know Hashem? Meaning, do you connect to that idea? Like, you're aware that there is an existence called Hashem. That's not Das yet. Das is that there is an existence of Hashem, and that idea is not just an idea, that means something to me. Like, that impacts my life. Like, if Hashem's existence is something that translates into the way I'm going to behave. Because you can know Hashem exists, but doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. That's not my business. His existence that's his business, not my business. That's not Das. Das is Hashem exists. Therefore, that I connect to that idea. It means something to me. Even deeper than that, Das of Hashem is where you have a feeling that Hashem's existence engenders within you a feeling of awe for Him, a love for Him. Like, you're gonna actually emotionally react. You're in a relationship with Him now. Even deeper than that is where your knowledge of Hashem is that Hashem is such a reality, such a fact, that you don't need any convincing. You don't need any proof. Hashem is not a topic. It's not a belief system. It's not a principle of faith that God exists. It's a reality. So just like your own existence is not something that you needed to explore. Do I exist? Do I not exist? Am I really here or not? It's not something that you needed to investigate and be proven. And that's a reality. So Hashem is just a reality. That's the deepest level of Das, where Hashem's reality is so real. It's just a fact.
So is that why we learn He invested His very self in the Torah? Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to know Him.
Yeah, that's right. He wants to be known, and so he gave us means to know Him. So we can study about Him, and that study can be internalized. That's what learning is. And so the mitzvah of Yodai to Hayom, it says you should know Hashem. There's a mitzvah of Emunah. Emunah is one thing. Knowledge is another thing. You have to know Hashem. Know means know. So it means all these three things. It means connecting to the idea, feeling the idea, and recognizing, making it real.
So the recognizing is notwithstanding the fact that Hashem is very concealed as well in the physical world.
Well, yeah, the whole thing is that He is concealed in the physical world, but here we're talking about through knowledge, an idea can become a reality for you. And then you start to see Him. Then he's not concealed, like He's revealed in the world. Like it's the most obvious thing. You see Him everywhere. Like some people can't find God anywhere. Some people find Him everywhere. It depends how real is He to you in the first place.
So is this recognition a doing, or it's still a knowledge?
Well, it's going to lead to doing.
It's before doing.
But yeah, in other words, you cannot not do when you have this das. Because Hashem is reality. So why are we discussing this das? It's this das that makes us human. It's this das that an animal is missing, doesn't have this awareness. V'hedra das, so look on the sixth last line of the page. V'hedra das zeh hasiba l'ruchshtus. It's a lack of this das that allows the foolishness to creep in. Hamachasa ala emes umata esa adam. It's the foolishness that covers over truth and fools us. Shenidma lo shegam kishu over al ratzon elyon odena biyadusay. It fools us to make us think that we can sin, we can do the wrong thing, but we're still Jewish. It's okay. We're still connected. When you don't have this das, so then there can be a disconnect between what you know in your mind and the way you live your life. Because Hashem, you know about Hashem, but until that is real for you, until it's a true reality, until you've had the connection, the feeling, and the recognition of Hashem, so then you can live this sort of dual life where you know what you're supposed to be doing, but you don't do it. And it doesn't bother you that you don't do it because I'm still connected, I'm still got my soul, like I'm still a good person. And so there's this insanity, this craziness that enters, this foolishness that you do the wrong thing, but you accept it. It doesn't bother you. So what do we need to do? To get rid of this foolishness of the powers of evil that try and confuse us and make us crazy. The method of getting rid of it is countering it with holy foolishness. There's the foolishness of the powers of evil that make us irrationally believe that we can be connected to Hashem even though we're sinning. How to counter it is to be irrationally holy, foolishly holy, crazy in our holiness. Even though generally speaking the middle path is the best path. You should be balanced and go along a steady middle path, not to go to extremes. Be reasonable. That's generally how we go. But that only works if you've always gone on a middle path, on a straight path. So then stick to it. But if you've strayed from that middle path already to go to the extreme of unholiness, then you have to go to the other extreme of holiness. Meaning, to be balanced and in the middle road, in the middle path, that's good as long as that's where you've stayed. If you started there, you continue there. But if you've already strayed to the other extreme, where you've gone off the middle path because you've become unholy, and you've sinned and you've done the wrong thing, so then you can't just go back to the middle path. That's not going to counter what you've done. You can't make amends for straying this way by just going back to the middle path. Then you have to go to the other extreme, this extreme of holiness. What does it mean, the extreme of holiness? Meaning, you have to do that which is right, even when it's ridiculous, even when you can't explain it. And if there's a particular weakness in your personality where this area you have become unholy in, so that very area you have to become extremely holy in. That very thing you have to counter it with extreme holiness. If you've been tempted or veered or gone off in a particular thing, that's your weakness. So then on that thing you can't just be average on that. You're going to have to be over average. You have to go beyond the letter of the law to counter that particular thing.
Is that in order to go back to the middle after?
To eventually get back to the middle.
Back to the middle.
Yeah.
So that's where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Bottom line, this is what it says about a Bal Tshuva, somebody who has sinned and is doing tshuva. Such a person, somebody who has sinned and is doing tshuva, should not say that I could sin. I myself would be happy to sin, just Hashem has told me not to, so I'm not going to. No. A Bal Tshuva has to say, I can't possibly do this. What this is talking about is, there's a saying in the sages say, that a person shouldn't say, I can't possibly eat chazer, eat not kosher. I couldn't do it, it makes me sick. I can't go anywhere near it. Don't say that. You could. You should say, I could eat it, just Hashem said not to. In other words, the only reason I'm not involved in this is because Hashem said not to. If he would let me, I would. But he said not to, so I won't. So the Maggid of Mezrich said, that's talking about a tzaddik. Somebody who has no connection to it can say, well, I could eat it, just Hashem said not to. But if you have eaten it before, then you can't say that. You have to say, I can't go anywhere near this. You have to be extreme in your attitude to it. In other words, somebody who has not got a particular weakness in this area, that person can say, look, I'm only going to do what Hashem said not to do. Hashem said not to eat it, I won't eat it. I don't have to be sick by it. I don't have to avoid it like the plague. Hashem said not to eat it, so I won't eat it. That's because you have no connection to it. But if you have done that sin, if you have eaten it before, then you can't say, look, it's fine, I can be around it. It's just Hashem told me not to have it. No, it has to be sickening to you. You have to avoid it completely. So in other words, a Baal Tshuva, somebody who's working on themselves to make amends for the wrong they've done, they have to go to the extreme. They have to avoid that which they sinned, their weakness, they have to avoid it to the extreme. Unlike a tzaddik doesn't have to do that. He's been on the middle path, he doesn't have to be extreme about it. Hashem said not to do it, so I won't do it. But that does make me sick, just Hashem told me not to do it. A tzaddik doesn't have to recoil from it in the same way. He can have a much more balanced view of the world. Whereas a Baal Tshuva who's been there has to be something that he avoids completely. That he couldn't possibly do. He can't go anywhere near it. Explains the Rebbe, because you're a Baal Tshuva, because you're returning from that thing, you're doing tshuva from this particular thing, you need extra fences and extra protections around it. So while somebody else who's not tempted by that could be around it and just say, I'm not going to do it because Hashem said not to. But you, because that's your weakness, you can't be anywhere near it. You need an extra protection around it. So that's the same thing here. That if you have already sinned, you've already been involved with the foolishness of evil, and that has caused you to sin and to banish the Shekhinah from the world. If you now want to re-invite the Shekhinah, the divine presence should come back into the world, you should reconnect to Hashem. You have to build a sanctuary, a holy space in your life, and it has to be built from acacia wood, atzei shittim, which we said earlier in the Maamar that atzei shittim, the reason why the Mishkan was built out of this particular wood, atzei shittim, is because shittim is from the word shtus, craziness. But what craziness? Holy craziness. Craziness for the sake of holiness. Irrational, crazy holiness. The Mishkan you build when you want to re-invite the divine presence into the world because you were involved with foolishness that is unholy, now you have to have holy foolishness, meaning crazy holy. Shtus tikdusha. So that's the only way to counter the folly, the craziness that unholiness presented is by going to the other extreme and being crazy in the side of holiness, over the top in holiness. And that this is a temporary measure. It's understood. This is not the ideal. But to counter what's going on the other side, you have to do it that way. And so the Rebbe said in other places as well that also if you're living in a time of craziness, where the craziness of unholiness is very apparent, people are irrational in their unholiness and extreme in their unholiness, so then generally the spiritual mood has to be a crazy holiness, doing mitzvahs in a crazy way, over the top. Not just a nice, balanced, neat way of doing mitzvahs, but it has to be mitzvahs all over the place.